Okay, good morning, everyone. It is Tuesday, May 25th, 2021. We're just getting to the end of the May month here and almost on to the rollover for the June contract. We'll get started here with our pre-market analysis. Remember, we have a short week this week. It is Memorial Day weekend, and the trade room will be closed on Friday and the following Monday. So we'll have a nice 4-day weekend. And just FYI, I am doing a webinar this afternoon. Will be 4 p.m. Pacific time, and I'll be covering some of the basics of my trading strategy. And then we're going to talk about what we've done in the trading room over the course of the last month since we did the last webinar. And so this month we do have a really nice equity curve to look at, and really what's made that equity curve so successful is managing the risk, and that means keeping your losses very small and then letting your winners at least go for a larger target. And so over time you're going to see, if you follow the strategy we're doing in here, your equity curve will slowly trend higher with some, small losing days. And then on those winning days, you'll be able to push up and push to the next level. So let's get into the pre-market analysis here. We've got the 3-month looking even more bullish today than ever since we've come all the way back up to the top of that wick, looking like we could potentially break it this morning. Still nothing new to be said here. The 3-month or the quarterly chart looks extremely bullish with no indications of exhaustion just yet. Same thing on our monthly, and now you can see huge wick to the downside on this monthly candle. Like I said, we just have a few days left here until the end of the month, and so this bar will officially close then, and we will get an actual read on where the RVI is at that time. So coming into next week, we'll definitely have a really clear picture here. As of right now, what we see is no signs of exhaustion. Things look extremely bullish here from our monthly perspective. And again, just to point out, that trend line or the slope of this push up has not been broken and looks very strong here. So our super high time frames look very strong. Now remember, we talked about this at the end of the week. So of last week. So on Friday, we mentioned that if this bar closes and we close higher, but we have the RVI pushing lower, that was going to give us somewhat of a bullish indication for the next week. And I mean, so far, we've had a pretty strong start to the week, right? We've had this push up. Let's take a look here, pushing, I don't know, call it 60, 70 points higher yesterday, so looking pretty strong. And again, really no signs of exhaustion here from a weekly perspective. Things just look really strong, huge wicks to the downside, and now you can see yesterday's price action, we were able to push up and break the previous high from the previous week. So things look very strong on our super high time frames. And now we're going to jump to our daily. So on the daily, we did have those very clear bearish indications. I want to say that was midweek last week, something like that. That did lead to the sell-off, and then we bounced. From that bounce, we didn't really have any clear indications. We had to rely on our shorter time frames for some indications there. But definitely a huge wick to the downside, huge doji candle here that we basically broke above and now have confirmed this bullish case that we made on the 19th, and now we're pushing higher. Now currently what I see here is no indication of exhaustion. So just like on the monthly, the weekly, the quarterly, on the daily, I also do not see any clear signs of exhaustion just yet. And we'll have to see as today develops what the daily chart has to say for the current candle. But off of the previous candle, really no signs of exhaustion. Maybe you could argue that we pushed a little higher and actually this pushed a little lower. So we did have just a little bit of a sign of exhaustion here off this most recent candle that has closed. But now we're continuing to push. We broke the high, and now you can see we pushed, from the previous inflection point in the RVI to a higher potential inflection point, depending on where this candle closes this morning. So we'll have to kind of monitor this. If we do end up pushing down this morning and our RVI stays up here, that would be a buildup of exhaustion on the daily. But just keep in mind the time frame above us has no indication of exhaustion. And then when we jump down to the time frame below the daily to our 4-hour chart, let's see, still no indication of exhaustion. So really on both sides of that daily, we're seeing no signs of exhaustion, with a little bit of an argument for some exhaustion off of the high that we made on the previous daily candle. So 4-hour looks pretty strong. You definitely saw off of the previous daily low here a really clear bull divergence, and that's why on a number of time frames we saw this indication, and that gave us a pretty confident kind of bias for a bull bias that morning. And of course we got, like I said, what did we do? We 41.40 to 42.10, let's call it, into the overnight. So 60-70 points. And so, things right now looking strong. You could even potentially see, if this RVI does come down just maybe less than a percentage point here, we could have a flat RVI, and then we could have a push up in price. So assuming that we don't break that low, so if we don't break 41.95 quarter, which I'll go ahead and just throw on this chart, if we don't break that, it looks like from an RVI perspective, we're going to have a flat RVI and a push up in price, which would be somewhat of a bullish indication here. Outside of that, no indications of exhaustion as we push. So everything right now looks pretty strong with really no clear indications of exhaustion. When we jump down to our 60-minute, remember yesterday we said that there was a case for somewhat of a bearish indication off of the candle we were looking at the current time that morning. But I did say, because we were in a bull push, we were going to have these bearish indications. And once we broke that 84 or whatever it was, 85, I don't remember exactly, must have been 85 even, that whole thing was going to be negated. Plus we had bullish indications off the pullbacks. And so that did end up getting negated there. I'm just going to go ahead and remove that for now, now that that's not in play. And we do have a little bit of exhaustion on the hourly on the push, which again, just like yesterday, is more so an indication of a little bit of exhaustion in the push higher, and really can only expect somewhat of a shallow pullback, especially because if you look at the lows, we continue to make these bullish divergences. So we're push higher high, push to a lower high on RVI. We push to, again, from this low over here, push to a higher low up here, but then the RVI pushed to a lower low. So we've got this buildup of bullish signals with a little bit of bearishness as we push. So pretty typical stuff here. And then currently you can even argue that we've been somewhat flat here in price, but then the RVI is still coming down a little bit lower. So at the current moment, we still have somewhat of a bullish divergence going on right now off of that low around 0450. So we're going to have to jump to our intermediate time frames and see what they're telling us from this general area right now. So currently everything looks pretty bullish. The only indication of exhaustion is really on the 60-minute, and we've already got a little bit of a shallow pullback from the high. And so that's all we could potentially get. So let's jump to our 30-minute and take a look at what that's saying. And then once we're done with the divergence analysis, I do want to look at overall kind of price action and the leg that we're in right now. So currently on the 30-minute, pretty much the same deal. You get these bullish indications off of the lows and then some exhaustion patterns off of the highs as we push. So again, pretty much just like the 60-minute, we got all of these little signals building up. Got another beautiful push here off of, let's call that 0375. And then currently, just like we saw on the hourly, we've got this slight push up, but a slight push down. So still some type of bullish indication here off of the low at 04 quarter. So we'll throw that in there. And we'll have to watch. Now, of course, we could have some type of smaller pullback, but overall things look super bullish. And I do want to keep in mind that we have our prediction points here around 99.50 and then around 95.75, which could act as support. But ultimately, notice 41.85, that level we had to break in order for there to be a bull case yesterday. That has not really been tested cleanly, at least when we look at it from a 30-minute perspective. And so a deeper pullback to find a long in one of these two areas, 85 or even 74.50, would make a lot of sense. So let's take a look at our 10-minute, and the 10-minute is essentially saying the same thing. We've got these pretty decent bullish indications off the lows. So from here over to here, it was flat, flat in price, but a decent push up on RVI. And then in this most recent area, we don't quite have the same indication that we saw on the 30-minute here, but still nice bullish indication here off the low. And then of course, remember, we're going to have those bearish signals off the highs indicating somewhat of some exhaustion and a pullback. But overall, things still look pretty strong here. Again, off of the same lows we saw on the 30-minute and the 60-minute, we see these bullish continuation patterns. So right now, things look pretty strong. We could potentially get just a shallow pullback, and even all the way to 85 would be a little bit more protracted than I really would expect from this current situation. But we have to keep in mind that we don't really know 100% what's going to happen next. We just have our signals. And so if we do get a little bit of a pullback here, we do have some very key levels below us to look for longs, because right now we don't have enough bearish indications to give us confidence in a bear bias, at least into the open for the first half hour to hour. Could jump down to our short time frames here and just kind of take a look at what's going on. Again, another nice double bottom here not too long ago in the pre-market, and a pretty decent bull divergence there. Another decent, well, at least from the last swing low, a decent divergence there. So again, that's that 04 quarter level, which we were going to want to keep in mind. We'd like to hold it here in order for some of these intermediate time frames in this short time frame to hold that signal. We did, to give it the benefit of the doubt, it did push from 04 to 0750, got a little 3-point push out of it. And so currently right now, what I'd like to also point out is we have this entire leg. So we have from 4250, let's see here, 4250 all the way up to the high we made in the overnight session. And so the retracements, interestingly enough, 41.85 is just about a 38% retracement of the push from the previous daily low. So that lines up pretty nicely. And then again, that 74.50 area is essentially a 50 to 61.8 retracement of all that price action. So not too bad on the retracements. We do have kind of what looks to me is a decent support and resistance level somewhere right in this 67 area. So I'm going to mark that 67 as a potential support and resistance on the pullback. We'll get that 72 out of there. Looks like 74.50 is a little bit more relevant now, at least this morning. And we could possibly even clean this up a little bit. Go ahead and get rid of this line. So we have a few levels below us again to watch for bounces, which we will play. And as we get closer to the open here, we have about 10 minutes. We'll see if we can get ourselves a decent trade, if not a few minutes before the open, something right out of the open. Assuming the stars align, we have a short time frame divergence at a decent level, and we can play it. Now, it looks like they're still defending this 04 quarter. It almost looked like they were going to break through as I was talking just a few moments ago. But they do seem to be defending it, at least so far. And you can see here on the tick chart, definitely push higher, but on the RVI, basically either flat if you look at that previous low, or push lower if you look at the second test of that level at 03 quarter. So still have divergence there. And then even on our 1 minute here, a nice little classic divergence off that low. So we'll see how far they can actually take it. There's definitely a little bit of exhaustion showing up on the 1 minute in this local area. And so we'll just kind of leave it as it is right now. Don't want to get into the weeds. We're in a lot of chop in this region. And we'll keep it with a bullish bias, looking for a push to break 14 quarter and 16. These are going to be the first two areas that could potentially give us some trouble. And so we'd like to break through that in order for our bull bias to really have some steam. And again, I do want to point out for anyone who wasn't here, when I first logged in, 0350, which was the level we were looking for potential resistance on the push up from yesterday, ended up turning into a really nice resistance level throughout the Globex session. And then in the overnight, really nice support right off that level. So there's a reason I leave the lines on here, and it's just because I see them work so well as support and resistance. And then of course, remember, for the bullish case this morning, we need to break the high here at 12. Let me get the actual number. So it's important to point out, and I don't want to cherry pick what we're looking at. So the high there at 1250. So let me go ahead and mark 1250 on the chart here. Is it 1250 or 1275? 1275. So let me go ahead and update that. Put that on the chart. We need to break above 1275 in order for our bull bias to really, come into play. And the reason being, and I should probably go back and point out, remember from our 4-hour perspective, we didn't have any signs of exhaustion. The daily had just a little slight indication there that looks like it's being negated right now. But when we got to our 60-minute, I'll go ahead and pull it up here, we did have the bearish indication off of that 1275. And then again, on our 30-minute and our 10-minute, like I said, we do have those some of that bearishness off that high. But like I said, I thought it was more expected because of the push higher. Because we have 60-minute, 30-minute, and even arguably 10-minute divergence off that high, bearish divergence, that's going to be important to break for our bullish case this morning. So we need to break above 1275 in order to have confidence in the bull bias. If they can't get above 1275, or if they come up right into 12 or 42.16 and they sell off, the bull bias is no longer going to be there. And so we have to then switch our hats. So remember, as a trader, you have to be very quick to flip your hat and change your bias based on what the market is telling you. Nobody has become successful in trading by being rigid. You have to kind of take it pretty much tick by tick, because the market could change again on the drop of a hat. So 1275 is going to be our bull bear line, and we ideally want to get above that. And maybe make it a reddish color. So we've got 4 minutes until the open. We are stuck in a little bit of a chop zone here, and there's currently really no trade. So just to sum everything up in a sentence or two, we have not a lot of signs of exhaustion on our higher time frames. When we get down to our intermediate time frames, we do get somewhat of a bearish indication off the overnight high. So what we need to do this morning is break above 1275 in order to confirm the potential bull bias this morning. And if we cannot get above that, we might have to switch our hats. And as we pull back, we are going to want to watch some of these key levels. And if we do get a nice clear signal, we're going to want to try them long to go with the current trend and what the higher time frames are telling us, and see if we can again push up and break through 16 and 14 quarter to potentially come up and get into some of these, break through some of these zones and get through the all-time high.